How does one guy build rockets that land themselves, totally reinvent the car, and then connect the whole world with satellites? Well, it's not just luck, and it's definitely not magic. It's an operating system. Today, we're decoding Elon Musk's mental framework to really understand the logic that's driving all those headlines.
So how does he actually do it? The key isn't some single brilliant idea that strikes him like lightning. It's a process. It's a repeatable logic engine that he applies to absolutely everything from batteries to brain implants. And today, we're going to take it apart piece by piece.
All right, so here's the plan. We'll start with his mental toolkit. Then we'll move to his execution playbook. After that, we're going to uncover the deep core philosophy that drives him. And finally, we'll grapple with the very real paradox of his power.
Okay, first up, his mental toolkit. This is really the core logic, the absolute bedrock of how the guy thinks.
Okay, so most of us, myself included, we reason by analogy. You look at what other people are doing, and you just make little tweaks, small improvements. It's kind of our default setting for just getting through the day. But let's be honest, it doesn't usually lead to those huge breakthroughs.
But Musk's default, totally different. He uses what's called first principles reasoning. This just means throwing out every single assumption you have, boiling a problem down to the fundamental truths, the things you know are like 100% true, and then you build your solution up from there.
And look, this is not just some fancy theory he talks about. When he started SpaceX, he didn't go around asking, hey, how much does a rocket cost? No way. He asked a much more basic question. What are rockets actually made of? By calculating the raw cost of the aluminum alloys, the titanium, the carbon fiber, he figured out he could build rockets for just 2% of the standard industry price. That's insane.
So this right here, this reveals a super critical part of his operating system. Not all information is created equal. I mean, his hierarchy is crystal clear. Way up at the top, the laws of physics. And at the very, very bottom, expert opinion. For Musk, reality just doesn't care about your PhD or your fancy title. It only cares about what's fundamentally true.
Okay, so now let's see how all these principles translate into his execution playbook, right? This is how he actually turns those big ideas into reality, and at a speed that's just unbelievable.
I mean, just think about the contrast here. You've got a company like Apple, right? They perfect everything in total secrecy. But Musk's companies, like Tesla, they literally evolve right in front of us. They ship fast, get that immediate, real-world feedback, and they just iterate. For them, perfection isn't something you aim for on launch day. It's the whole journey.
Okay, look at this number. $180 million. That's how much he personally made from selling PayPal. Now, what would most of us do? Probably put it in a nice, safe account, right? Not Musk. He bet the entire farm. Split it all between SpaceX, Tesla, and SolarCity. And get this, he thought all three had about a 90% chance of complete failure. And why would he do that? Well, he actually shares this really powerful mental model with Jeff Bezos. It wasn't about getting richer. It was about this deep-seated fear of looking back when he's, 80 years old and regretting that he didn't even try to solve some of humanity's biggest problems. For him, the fear of future regret is way, way stronger than the fear of failing right now.
And the playbook goes way deeper. I mean, he compresses feedback loops by literally reading customer complaints on Twitter himself. He thinks in probabilities, not this is definitely going to happen, which lets him change his mind without getting his ego all tied up in it. And this idea of success detachment is huge. He just moves on from a massive win like PayPal to go chase the next, even bigger mission.
Okay, so we've seen the how, right? But honestly, none of it really makes sense until you get the why. The much, much deeper reason that drives all of this. This is like the source code of his entire operating system.
His whole journey, it didn't start with a business plan or a pitch deck. It started with a personal crisis. Can you imagine? As a teenager back in South Africa, he's just searching for purpose, reading all these religious texts, digging into heavy German philosophers like Schopenhauer, and just coming up empty. Nothing felt right.
And where does he finally find his answer? Not in some dusty old philosophy book, but in a science fiction comedy of all places, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And this book, it gives him this incredibly profound and honestly kind of absurd revelation.
Yeah, 42. See, the central joke in the book has this really deep insight buried in it. You have this supercomputer that crunches numbers for millions of years to find the answer to life, the universe, and everything. And what does it spit out? 42. And that was the light bulb moment. The answer is completely meaningless if you don't even know what the right question is in the first place. And boom, that became his life's mission. If the universe is the answer, then our goal has to be to expand consciousness. We need to survive, to grow as a species, so that one day, maybe, we can get smart enough to figure out what the hell the right questions even are. And that right there is the entire reason SpaceX exists. It's not really a rocket company. It's a life insurance policy for all of humanity.
So now we've got the full picture, right? From first principles all the way up to his core philosophy. Now we can really dig into the messy stuff, the complex, often really contradictory results of his operating system out here in the real world. You know, a great way to see how unconventional his style is to compare him to his biggest rival in the space race, Jeff Bezos. Musk is all about technology first. He thinks he knows what you'll want before you do. Bezos, he's famously customer first, always working backward from what people need right now. Musk shouts his crazy, bold goals from the rooftops. Bezos, he likes to innovate quietly, behind the scenes. So, academics who study this stuff actually have a name for it: identity-mission fusion. It's this really intense psychological thing where his personal identity basically merges with his company's missions. So, something like SpaceX is no longer just a business, it's a civilizational imperative. And when you think like that, it's easy to see how you can justify taking extreme measures and absolutely enormous risks.
And that fusion, it creates this constant push and pull, this innovation, turbulence, tension. It's a dynamic that gets you incredible world-changing breakthroughs, like reusable rockets. But it also leads to these severe crises, like Tesla's infamous production hell, all the public controversies, the crazy turnover. It's like the very same force that creates the magic is the one that also creates all the chaos.
And this brings us to probably the most complex outcome of all. I mean, his control over systems like Starlink, which literally became the communications backbone for Ukraine during the war, has basically made him what some people call a quasi-state actor. Think about that. He's a private citizen making decisions that have the geopolitical weight of an entire nation. And that, as you can imagine, leads a lot of people to label him a national security risk.
All right, let's put this all together. Let's map out his entire operating system, from the very first thought all the way to the final action.
So this is it, the Musk matrix. He starts with a problem, and he looks at the conventional solution, right? The way everyone else does it. But then he pours both of those things into this mental filter. And that filter is built on first principles, on the absolute laws of physics. It's weighted by minimizing future regret and thinking in decades, not months. And what comes out the other side is a solution that looks completely impossible to the rest of us, but to him, it's just fundamentally logical. So the key really isn't to copy his ideas, it's to understand his filter.
And that leaves us with one last, and I think really critical question. Musk's operating system has proven to be unbelievably effective at building the future. There's no denying that. But when a single person's code can fundamentally rewrite the rules for all of society, it kind of forces us all to ask, who, if anyone, is supposed to be writing the code for accountability?